Have you ever caught yourself thinking something so disturbing that you immediately pushed it away? Or felt a surge of rage so intense it frightened you? Perhaps you've looked at someone with inexplicable hatred, only to realize later they reminded you of something in yourself? These aren't random glitches in your mind. They're glimpses of what Carl Jung called your shadow self, the hidden part of your psyche that grows more powerful the longer you deny its existence. We spend our lives crafting our public personas. We carefully select which parts of ourselves to showcase and which to conceal. Yet in quiet moments of reflection, in dreams, in sudden eruptions of anger or jealousy, something else emerges, something we've tried desperately to keep hidden, even from ourselves. The shadow doesn't ask permission to exist. It appears uninvited in those moments when your carefully constructed self-image cracks, revealing impulses, desires, and capabilities that contradict who you believe yourself to be. These glimpses can be terrifying precisely because they feel familiar, as if somewhere deep inside, you've always known these aspects of yourself existed. Today, we're venturing into the darkest corners of your psyche to discover why facing your shadow doesn't destroy you, but transforms everything about how you experience life. This isn't about indulging destructive impulses or abandoning moral judgment. It's about becoming whole in a culture that encourages fragmentation, about reclaiming the energy and potential that lies dormant in what you've disowned. When Carl Jung developed his concept of the shadow, he wasn't merely theorizing about human nature. He was fighting for his own sanity. After his devastating break with Freud and subsequent psychological collapse, Jung entered what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense psychological turmoil where he faced his own shadow head-on. During this time, Jung recorded his experiences in the Red Book, a document so personal and revealing that his family kept it hidden for decades after his death. What he discovered would fundamentally change our understanding of the human psyche. Before we go deeper, if this resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Your support helps more people discover this transformational content. What is the shadow self? The shadow isn't simply your negative qualities. It represents everything you've rejected, disowned, and pushed into the darkness of your unconscious mind. It contains not only your so-called dark impulses but also potent, undeveloped talents and creative powers you've never allowed yourself to express. For Jung, the shadow was not a theoretical construct but a living, breathing aspect of the psyche, as real and influential as the conscious mind itself. He discovered through his own psychological breakdown that these disowned parts don't simply disappear when we turn away from them. They form a kind of psychological counterweight to our conscious identity, growing more autonomous and powerful the longer they remain unacknowledged. Why do we create a shadow in the first place? During childhood, we quickly learn which behaviors earn approval from parents, teachers, and peers. We unconsciously begin suppressing aspects of ourselves that seem unacceptable. This isn't a moral failure. It's a psychological adaptation necessary for social functioning. Consider how this process unfolds. A young child displays anger, only to be told, "Nice boys don't shout." Another expresses sadness and hears, "Big girls don't cry." A third shows pride in an achievement and is cautioned against becoming full of yourself. Over time, these messages accumulate, and the child learns to suppress not just behaviors but entire emotional ranges and natural inclinations. But there's a price. The more rigidly we define ourselves as only good, kind, rational, or peaceful, the more powerfully the opposite qualities accumulate in our shadow. The person who insists they're always selfless harbors secret selfishness. The one who prides themselves on rationality carries an unconscious sea of emotions. The perpetually agreeable individual contains unexpressed rage. This creates an inner split that Jung believed was the source of tremendous psychological suffering. We identify with certain aspects of our nature while disowning others, creating an incomplete self-image that distorts our perception of everything around us. The energy required to maintain this split drains our vitality, limiting our capacity for authentic connection and creative expression. Jung recognized that the shadow operates according to psychological laws as real as the laws of physics. The shadow doesn't disappear when ignored, it goes underground. It doesn't die when rejected, it grows stronger in darkness. It becomes charged with emotional energy, more primitive and powerful. Like water seeking its level, the disowned aspects of ourselves will find expression, whether we consent to this expression or not. This understanding challenges the conventional notion that psychological health means eliminating negative thoughts or impulses. Jung proposed something far more revolutionary. The path to wholeness requires us to recover these disowned parts of ourselves, not to become them, but to integrate them consciously, to bring them into relationship with our conscious values and choices. Shadow manifestations. The most common manifestation of the shadow is projection. When we refuse to acknowledge certain qualities within ourselves, we become hypersensitive to those same qualities in others. The colleague whose ambition irritates you might be reflecting your own denied ambition. The friend whose neediness makes you uncomfortable might be mirroring vulnerability you've refused to acknowledge. Jung observed this process in his patients and in himself with remarkable clarity. Projection operates with a particular logic. What we most strongly react against in others often represents precisely what we cannot bear to see in ourselves. The intensity of our reaction, that sense of being triggered, serves as a reliable indicator that we've encountered our own shadow material being reflected back to us. This mechanism operates so smoothly and automatically that we rarely question it. We simply assume our perceptions are objective, that the person truly is too aggressive, manipulative, weak, or whatever quality has activated our reaction. The possibility that we might be seeing our own disowned qualities rarely enters our conscious awareness. This isn't merely a psychological curiosity, it's a significant source of human conflict. Wars, persecutions, and everyday tensions often stem from this mechanism. The enemy, the outsider, the other, becomes the perfect receptacle for our disowned qualities. Jung went so far as to suggest that many of humanity's greatest atrocities stem from this collective refusal to acknowledge our shadow aspects. On the personal level, the shadow emerges in countless ways, often disguised but detectable through certain patterns. When you feel disproportionate dislike for someone you barely know. When you consistently attract the same destructive relationships. When you find yourself saying, "I would never do that," with unusual intensity. When you engage in behavior that later seems completely out of character. When you experience intense, inexplicable attraction or repulsion. When you're overwhelmed by emotion that seems disproportionate to the situation. When you find yourself being uncharacteristically defensive or self-righteous. Dreams provide another window into the shadow. Jung found that the shadow often appears in dreams as figures that disturb or frighten us, characters of the same gender who possess qualities we've disowned. These dream figures aren't arbitrary symbols, but personifications of aspects of ourselves seeking recognition and integration. The most dramatic encounters with the shadow occur in moments of crisis, when the carefully constructed persona can no longer contain what has been building beneath. A lifetime of suppressed anger erupts in a shocking outburst. A pattern of rigidly controlled behavior suddenly gives way to impulsivity. The respectable public figure is exposed in a scandal that seems completely out of character. Consider how often we use language that distances us from these eruptions. "I don't know what came over me. I wasn't myself. Something just snapped." This language reveals our reluctance to claim these behaviors as expressions of our own psyche. Yet from Jung's perspective, these moments reveal a profound truth, that we are not only who we think we are, but also everything we've tried not to be. These aren't anomalies or temporary lapses in judgment, they are the shadow demanding recognition. And when these eruptions occur, they don't just threaten our self-image. They offer a profound opportunity for genuine transformation if we have the courage to ask, what disowned part of myself is seeking expression? What have I been refusing to see? The cost of shadow denial. What happens when we refuse to face our shadow? The psychological cost is immense. Diminished energy, maintaining the split between conscious and unconscious drains vital energy. Projection, we see in others what we cannot accept in ourselves, damaging relationships. Self-sabotage, the shadow undermines our conscious goals through accidents, mistakes, and impulsive actions. Emotional volatility, unexplained mood swings, disproportionate reactions, and emotional numbness. Loss of creativity, creative energy becomes blocked, leading to stagnation. Moral rigidity, black and white thinking replaces nuanced moral understanding. Psychological symptoms, anxiety, depression, and compulsive behaviors often stem from shadow denial. Jung observed that many psychological symptoms weren't the result of trauma alone, but of disconnection from vital parts of the psyche. When we reject essential aspects of our nature, the psyche protests through symptoms that demand our attention. But perhaps the greatest cost is what Jung called the unlived life, the potential that remains dormant when we identify with only a fragment of who we are. The gifts, talents, and possibilities encoded in our shadow remain inaccessible as long as we refuse to acknowledge them. If you're finding value in this exploration of the shadow, please like this video to help others discover this content. Pathways to shadow integration. How do we begin the process of shadow integration? Jung emphasized that it cannot be accomplished through intellectual understanding alone. The shadow, by its nature, resists direct examination. It requires a more subtle approach, one that honors the natural resistance we feel toward confronting difficult truths about ourselves. This resistance is natural and even necessary. The ego resists shadow work because it threatens the stability of our self-concept. We've invested years in crafting a particular identity, and acknowledging disowned aspects challenges this carefully constructed sense of self. Jung recognized that this resistance serves a protective function, preventing us from being overwhelmed by unconscious material before we're ready to integrate it. Yet there comes a point when the cost of maintaining this resistance exceeds the benefit. When projection, self-sabotage, and emotional depletion begin to undermine our relationships and creative potential, the time for shadow work has arrived. Here are 5 powerful pathways to shadow integration that Jung and his successors have found particularly effective. 1. Dream work. The figures that disturb us in dreams often represent aspects of our shadow. Instead of dismissing unsettling dreams, pay attention to recurring characters or situations that trigger strong emotions. Ask, what might this figure represent in my own psyche? Jung considered dreams the royal road to the unconscious, revealing in symbolic form what consciousness has yet to recognize. Dreams bypass our conscious defenses, presenting shadow material in metaphoric language that the psyche can approach more safely than direct confrontation. Begin by recording dreams immediately upon waking, without censoring or editing. Notice recurring figures, situations, or emotions. Pay particular attention to dream characters that share your gender. These often represent shadow aspects. Ask yourself, if this dream character were a part of me, what would it be trying to express? 2. Trigger awareness. When someone triggers an intense emotional reaction, pause before responding. Ask yourself, why does this person affect me so strongly? What quality in them am I reacting to? Might this quality exist in me in some form? Our emotional triggers provide one of the most reliable maps to our shadow. The practice involves 3 steps. First, notice when your emotional reaction seems disproportionate to the situation. Second, identify the specific quality in the other person that triggers you. Third, explore honestly how this quality might exist in you in some form, perhaps expressed differently or repressed entirely. This practice doesn't mean your perception is wrong, or that the other person doesn't possess this quality. Rather, it suggests that your strong reaction contains information about your own psyche worth exploring. The intensity of your response signals that you've encountered shadow material. 3. Creative expression. Through art, writing, music, or movement, the shadow can find symbolic expression. This creative dialogue allows us to approach the shadow indirectly, circumventing the ego's resistance. Jung himself used drawing and painting extensively in his own shadow work, creating the remarkable images found in his Red Book. Creative expression works because it engages the same symbolic, non-verbal language as the unconscious. It allows shadow content to emerge in a form that can be witnessed without immediate judgment or interpretation. Try creating without planning or controlling the outcome. Let images, words, or movements emerge spontaneously. Later, approach what you've created with curiosity. What emotions does it evoke? What aspects of yourself might it represent? What might it be trying to communicate? For active imagination, Jung developed this technique as a way to engage directly with unconscious figures. Choose a figure from a dream, or create one that represents an aspect of your shadow. Engage in an internal dialogue, asking what it wants and what it has to teach you. This profound practice begins by identifying a figure from a dream or meditation that seems to carry shadow energy. Imagine this figure before you and initiate a dialogue. Ask questions. Who are you? What do you want from me? What do you have to teach me? Allow the figure to respond without editing or controlling the answers. Record this dialogue through writing or recording. The key is maintaining the tension between conscious engagement and allowing unconscious material to emerge unfiltered. Active imagination creates a bridge between conscious and unconscious, facilitating direct communication with shadow aspects. 5. Shadow journaling. Write about the qualities you most despise in others. Then explore honestly. how might these qualities exist in you in some form? What experiences shape your judgment of these qualities? What might these qualities look like if expressed in a healthy way? This reflective practice begins with listing qualities you find most disturbing in others, not abstract qualities, but specific traits that trigger strong reactions. For each quality, explore these questions. How might this quality exist in me, perhaps in a different form? When have I expressed this quality, even slightly? What might be the positive potential of this quality if consciously integrated? Shadow journaling works by creating a safe container for exploring projections. Through writing, we can approach difficult recognitions at our own pace, gradually building tolerance for acknowledging aspects of ourselves we've previously rejected. Remember, shadow integration isn't about indulging destructive impulses or abandoning moral judgment. It's about becoming conscious of what has been unconscious, bringing light to what has existed in darkness. The goal isn't elimination but relationship, learning to engage with all aspects of your psyche with awareness rather than unconscious reactivity. This relationship transforms both the conscious personality and the shadow itself, allowing previously destructive energy to find constructive expression. The transformation. There comes a point in shadow work where something fundamental begins to shift. The initial pain of facing disowned aspects of yourself gradually gives way to a sense of expansion, as if you're inhabiting more of your true territory. This expansion transforms everything. 1. Authentic relationships. When you're no longer using others as screens for your projections, relationships deepen. You can see people as they are, not as carriers of your disowned qualities. Compassion naturally emerges as you recognize the universal human struggle with the shadow. 2. Creative flow. Creative energy flows more freely because it's no longer blocked by psychological repression. Many artists, writers, and innovators report breakthrough experiences following intense shadow work. 3. Emotional integration. Emotions that once seemed threatening become valuable messengers. Anger can transform into healthy assertiveness. Fear can become appropriate caution. Jealousy can reveal genuine desires. For moral authenticity, moral choices emerge from genuine self-knowledge rather than conformity to external standards. There's an integrity to decisions made from this place, a harmony between inner conviction and outer action. 5. Access to wisdom. The shadow contains not just our so-called negative qualities, but our unrealized greatness. Qualities that seem threatening when unconscious reveal their positive potential when consciously held. Jung believed that shadow integration was not merely personal but collective. Each individual who undertakes this challenging work contributes to the psychological development of humanity as a whole. In an age of polarization and projection on a global scale, this work takes on particular urgency. Conclusion. When you face your shadow, everything changes, not because you've eliminated your darkness, but because you've developed a new relationship with it. The shadow remains a vital aspect of the psyche, no longer split off and autonomous, but engaged in conscious dialogue. This ongoing relationship requires vigilance. Moments of stress or crisis can reactivate old patterns of projection and denial. Dreams continue to bring messages from the unconscious, sometimes revealing new layers of the shadow awaiting integration. Yet something has fundamentally changed. When you faced your shadow willingly, you're no longer at its mercy. Its eruptions become less destructive because they're no longer charged with the energy of lifelong repression. You recognize the shadow's appearance more quickly before projection takes hold. This journey toward wholeness isn't about reaching perfection or permanent serenity. It's about authenticity, the capacity to stand in your own truth, to make choices that reflect the whole of who you are rather than a carefully curated persona. If this exploration has resonated with you, please subscribe to continue this journey into Jungian psychology. Share your experiences with shadow work in the comments. Your insights might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Remember, as Jung wrote, there's no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. It is precisely in embracing our completeness, both light and shadow, that we find the transformation we've been seeking all along.